My sister was different. From the moment she could think, she could see the future. When she turned 5, both our parents got laid off. Grandma had a stroke and was stuck in the ICU. Dad aged overnight, his hair literally turning white like in some damn horror movie. That's when Chloe, clutching her filthy stuffed doll, tugged at Dad's shirt and mumbled, "Daddy." By 5:45, Dad had zero energy to figure out what the hell his 5-year-old was babbling about. He just patted her head and told me to watch her. But Chloe pushed my hand away and grabbed Dad's shirt, like her life depended on it, repeating those numbers over and over. "Daddy, 545, 545. Mom finally paid attention, frowning as she repeated 545. "Chloe, honey, what are you talking about?" Dad rubbed his sore neck, annoyed as hell. "Just take the kids home. I'll stay at the hospital." But Mom was already obsessed with those numbers. Mom suddenly pulled out her phone and typed the numbers into her browser. It was a stock ticker. A stock so deep in the red it looked like a bloodbath. "Baby, are you telling Mommy and Daddy to buy this stock?" Mom gripped Chloe's shoulders. Dead serious. Chloe looked right at her without blinking and nodded. "Yes. You have to buy this stock. Get rich, live in a big house, eat fried chicken every day." My parents looked at each other shocked as hell. Nobody in our family played the stock market. No one had ever mentioned stock tickers around Chloe. So how the fuck did she know? When you're desperate, you gamble everything. Dad decided to take the risk. We sold our bike, our fridge, our TV, everything we had. And the next morning when the market opened, he bought that stock, that blood red, terrifying stock. Now we literally had nothing. We couldn't even pay for Grandma's hospital bill tomorrow. Chloe curled up in my arms that night, her stomach growling. Nobody slept. The next morning we were woken up by a phone call. Old Mr. Jang from the next building called. "Dad. Holy shit, David. That stock is skyrocketing. You're freaking rich now." Dad frantically opened his phone. That blood red stock was now blazing green, pumping like crazy. Dad went all in, borrowing a massive pile of money from relatives and dumping it all into that stock. A month later, we moved from our cramped ash-hole apartment into the most expensive residential area in downtown Riverside. Chloe's raggedy stuffed doll was replaced with the most expensive Barbie you could buy. "Chloe, baby, you're Daddy's little lucky star. Whatever you want, Daddy will buy it for you. We're rich now." Dad, dressed in designer casual wear, hugged Chloe tight and kissed her cheeks over and over. Grandma had already recovered. Standing beside Dad, the brilliant chandelier lights shone on Chloe. Her skin was glowing, dressed in a gorgeous princess dress, smiling like a little angel. She literally sparkled.
"Mia,
"Your sister said she wants the fish soup you make. Go make it for her."
now."
Mom smiled, but if you looked closely, that smile didn't reach her eyes. It looked more like disgust. I was still wearing my old clothes because nobody remembered I existed. Everyone's eyes were on Chloe. I stood at the kitchen sink carefully scraping fish scales, but sometimes being careful doesn't matter. The knife slipped and cut my finger. Blood stained the fish, stained the water in the basin, and stained my eyes red. When Chloe turned 10, Dad opened his third company. Thanks to Chloe's predictions, Dad's business was booming. Chloe's status in the family kept rising, but her body kept getting weaker, which made my parents spoil her even more. And me, I became more and more invisible. When I had a fever, I curled up alone in my room. My parents wouldn't even spare me a glance. Grandma hated me even more. "Linda, I told you back then we shouldn't have kept this kid. You insisted on having her. Should have just aborted her. She's eating our food for free, living in this nice house. Thanks to Chloe's blessings." Useless. Absolutely useless. One time, right before my parents were about to board a plane, Chloe suddenly started crying, screaming, "Mom, Dad, you can't get on this plane. You can't." My parents were heading overseas for a huge business deal. If it worked out, our family company could go public. Dad didn't want to give up this chance. But then he thought about it. When had Chloe ever been wrong? He ripped up the tickets, picked up Chloe, and went back home. That night, every news channel reported that the plane had crashed. Chloe's prediction was right again. This time, she saved my parents' lives. Grandma got superstitious and hired some fortune teller. The guy said Chloe might have a fox spirit inside her, giving her psychic powers. The fortune teller stroked his goatee and continued. "You have another daughter, right?" She cursed. "Born under an evil star." Grandma lost her shot. She was terrified my fate would bring disaster to the family. She suggested that since Chloe was enough, I was useless and should be given away to some childish family. That's when Chloe spoke up.
"Dedzi, iate Mia."
"She bullies me. She chokes me at night. She says I stole Mom and Dad's love." Dad slammed the table, furious. "Send her away tomorrow." The next day, I was given to our old neighbor from when we lived in the slums, Aunt Betty. Aunt Betty had cervical cancer when she was young and had her uterus removed. When my parents approached her, she agreed without thinking twice. Aunt Betty ran a small food stall, barely making enough to support me. She handed me a freshly grilled sausage from her stall. Mia, are you jealous of your sister? I bit into the delicious sausage, juice dripping down. Nope. Because I knew that every time my sister saw the future, cost her years of her life. She wouldn't live past 18. One night when we were little, moonlight streamed through the badly closed curtains onto our bed. Chloe and I were lying on a cold bed together. I was patting her shoulder, trying to get her to sleep. My eyelids were heavy, almost asleep. In the silent night, I suddenly heard a voice. System binding successful. I opened my eyes. Chloe beside me hadn't said a word. This system will grant all your wishes. However, granting wishes requires an exchange of lifespan. Old robotic voice continued. Depending on the size of the wish, the lifespan required varies. Does the host confirm binding to this system? Silence for a few seconds. Then I heard Chloe's voice. I confirm. I thought it was just a dream, but soon I realized it wasn't. In the hospital corridor, the smell of disinfectant mixed with medicine stung my nose. I heard that cold robotic voice again. Does the host confirm? Using 7 years of lifespan in exchange for wealth? Almost without hesitation, I saw Chloe in my arms, eyes clear and bright, lips pressed together. Yes, I confirm. At the airport, Chloe tugged at Dad's sleeve, insisting he and Mom not board the plane. I heard that familiar eerie voice again. System has detected risk issues with this flight. Does the host wish to use 10 years of lifespan to exchange for future information about this flight? Yes, I confirm. Several times I wanted to ask Chloe what the hell this voice was, but when I met her cold eyes, I backed down. Chloe seemed to hate me more and more. When did it start? I remember in elementary school. I brought home a test with a perfect score. Chloe's paper had 55 points. Dad patted my head encouragingly and pulled out a few candies from his pocket for me. Then he grabbed a book from the table and smacked Chloe's ass with it. She stared at me with angry eyes. After that, I never brought home perfect test scores again. Mom and Dad were too busy with work to ask about our grades anyway, but Chloe's homeroom teacher would often call my parents. Chloe's grades were at the bottom, or Chloe was disrupting class. Naturally, she got beaten. She wasn't like other kids, who would cry and beg before the beating even started. She just bit her lips silently, staring at me like every beating was my fault. Chloe's beatings continued until that system appeared. The hands that fell on her head were no longer harsh, but gentle and loving. The tone was no longer sharp but adoring and cherishing. As for me, I was still studying hard and staying disciplined, but my parents ignored me even more. Chloe's eyes no longer held anger when she looked at me. Now they were smug, proud, as if saying she'd finally won our parents' love. Finally, one day with her encouragement, my family sent me away. Luckily, Aunt Betty was genuinely good to me. Thanks to the money Aunt Betty made from her food stall, I finished middle school. Our slum neighborhood wasn't in a school district, and there were no high schools nearby. Aunt Betty strung the last skewer and wiped her greasy hands. Don't worry, Mia. There's always a way. Tomorrow I'll go see an old friend. If I ask him, it'll work out. I opened my mouth but didn't say anything. I knew the friend Aunt Betty was talking about was her ex-husband. Apparently, after divorcing her, he quickly hooked up with a rich woman with connections, and he sweet-talked his way into a cushy job. Early the next morning, Aunt Betty changed out of her usual grease-stained sweater and pulled out a windbreaker from the bottom of her trunk. I stayed home stringing sausages, feeling nervous for Aunt Betty. I'd almost finished a whole basin of sausages when Aunt Betty came back. The windbreaker she'd buttoned up so carefully this morning was now missing several buttons, and the hem was dirty. Looking closely, Aunt Betty's eyes were red, but she forced a huge smile, her eyes shining.
Mia.
I did it. Clearwater High, the best private high school in Riverside. She pulled out a pink shopping bag from behind her. I walked around downtown. They said all the kids are wearing this brand now. It's called Aeropostale, or something. Try it on quick. At Aunt Betty's insistence, I put on the dress she bought me. The hem had pink lace trim and puffy sleeves. I picked up the receipt nearby. Price, $299. Aunt Betty sold each sausage for $3, netting $1.50 profit. To buy this dress, she needed to sell 200 sausages. Aunt Betty quickly snatched the receipt from my hand, crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. I've got money. Don't worry. Since you're with me, I won't let you suffer. Later, I found out that Aunt Betty had thrown a tantrum at her ex-husband's doorstep that day, threatening that if he didn't get me into the best high school, She'd expose all his dirty secrets. The tactic worked. A month later, I walked into Clearwater High on a cool autumn breeze. Clearwater High was the best private school in Riverside. 19% got into top-tier universities. The honors classes had students averaging Ivy League acceptances. The tuition was way beyond our budget. Aunt Betty told me not to worry.
Just focus on studying.
I wore the new dress Aunt Betty bought me and walked into campus. As soon as I entered, I saw a girl surrounded by a group of people. She wore a designer logo skirt, her face beaming with confidence. He turned around and looked at me. That familiar robotic voice echoed in my ears again. Does the host wish to use 10 years of lifespan to exchange for one wish? Chloe smiled, lips pursed.
Yes.
The robotic voice faded, leaving a ringing silence in my ears that the bustle of the school courtyard couldn't penetrate. 10 years. Chloe had just traded a decade of her life. For what? To embrace me? To kick me out? The girl in the designer skirt stepped forward. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. Chloe looked different than the last time I saw her. She was 16 now, but beneath the layers of heavy foundation and the expensive highlighter on her cheekbones, the skin was slack. Her eyes, though triumphant, were sunken in dark hollows that no concealer could fully hide. She moved with a stiffness that belonged to a woman of 50, not a teenager. She stopped in front of me. The scent of Chanel No. 5 was overpowering, barely masking a faint, underlying smell of something metallic.
Risht.
Or old blood. Mia, she cooed. Her voice was raspier than I remembered. I didn't know you could afford Clearwater. Did your charity case guardian sell her kidney? The crowd snickered. I gripped the strap of my bag, feeling the phantom warmth of Aunt Betty's sausage grease on my fingers. Leave me alone, Chloe. I'm just here to study. Study. Chloe tilted her head. I don't think so. She snapped her fingers. Suddenly, the school security alarm began to blare. A heavy-set guard pushed through the circle of students, heading straight for me. That's her, Chloe said, her voice dripping with fake concern. I saw her slip the principal's tablet into her bag. I tried to stop her, but— Check her bag, someone shouted. My blood ran cold. Does the host wish to use 10 years of lifespan to exchange for the utter ruin of Mia's reputation? That was the wish. I didn't take anything, I said, backing away. The guard didn't listen. He ripped the bag from my shoulder and dumped the contents onto the pristine pavement. Notebooks, cheap pens, a water bottle, and there, sliding out with a clatter, was a sleek, silver tablet with the school logo. The whisper was instantaneous.
Thief. Gutarat. Scum.
I looked at Chloe. She wasn't looking at the tablet. She was looking at me, her eyes burning with a feverish, unnatural light. She smiled, and a trickle of blood leaked from her left nostril. She quickly wiped it away with a silk handkerchief, but I saw it. She had paid 10 years just to frame me on my first day. She was biologically 45 years old inside that teenage shell. Get her off campus. The guard spat, grabbing my arm. As I was dragged away, humiliated, eyes burning, I locked eyes with my sister. She mouthed 3 words. I win again. I wasn't expelled. Aunt Betty saw to that. She marched into the principal's office the next morning, slammed her bank book on the desk, showing every cent she had scraped together, and demanded they check the security cameras. The cameras, conveniently, had glitched at the exact moment of the theft. But Aunt Betty threatened to camp out in the lobby with a banner reading, "Clearwater bullies the poor." The administration, terrified of bad PR, allowed me to stay on probation. But the damage was done. I was the pariah. Months passed. I kept my head down, aced my exams, and ate lunch alone in the library. I watched Chloe from a distance. She was the queen of Clearwater. She dated the captain of the football team. She wore a new designer outfit every day. My parents donated a new wing to the library in her name. But I saw what others didn't. I saw how she gripped the railing when walking down the stairs, her knuckles white, knees trembling. I saw the way she panted after walking just a few yards. During gym class, she sat out, claiming delicate constitution. One rainy Tuesday in November, I walked into the bathroom and heard retching. Violent, wet coughing that sounded like lungs tearing apart. I pushed open the stall door. Chloe was slumped over the toilet. The water was bright red. She looked up, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. When she saw me, her eyes widened in panic. She tried to stand but slipped on the tile, her legs too weak to support her weight. Get out, she wheezed. Get out, you jinx. I didn't leave. I wetted a paper towel and knelt beside her. You're dying, Chloe. She slapped my hand away. Shut up. I'm rich. I'm perfect. Dad just bought me a Porsche. You can't drive a Porsche if you're dead, I said quietly. How many years do you have left? You traded 7 for money, 10 for the plane, 10 to frame me. That's 27 years, Chloe. Plus the small wishes, the test scores, the popularity. You're pushing 50 inside. She froze. The malice in her eyes turned to terror. You know. I heard the voice. I whispered. That night in the bedroom. I heard you say yes. Chloe slumped against the stall wall, clutching her stomach. It's not fair, she sobbed, and the sound was like dry leaves crumbling. You were the healthy one. You were the smart one. Mom and Dad never looked at me. I just wanted them to look at me. They look at the money, I said brutally. Not you. That's a lie. She shrieked, coughing up another splatter of blood. They love me. I'm their lucky star. Then stop, I urged. Stop making wishes. Maybe you can live a few more years. She looked at me, her lips stained crimson. A twisted, tragic smile formed on her face. I can't, she whispered. The system, it doesn't just wait for me to ask anymore. It demands. Suddenly, her eyes rolled back. The robotic voice echoed, not in my head this time, but seemingly vibrating from her very bones. Host body deteriorating. Critical organ failure imminent. Does the host wish to exchange 15 years of lifespan for a complete organ regeneration? I grabbed her shoulders. Chloe, don't. You don't have 15 years left. You'll die instantly. She looked at me, delirious, pain racking her body. She looked at the blood on her hands, then at the mirror where her reflection showed a balding, gray-skinned wraith. I don't want to be ugly, she whimpered. I confirm.
No.
I screamed, but the light in her eyes shifted. The gray pallor of her skin flushed with a sudden, supernatural vitality. She took a deep breath, the rattle in her chest vanishing. She stood up, strong, vibrant, her skin glowing with the impossible youth of a newborn. She looked at me, power radiating off her. But I saw the truth. It was the last flare of a dying star. I feel great, she said, her voice smooth as silk. She kicked me in the shin, hard. Stay away from me, Mia. I have a party to plan. She walked out, leaving me kneeling on the cold floor. I did the math. She was biologically 65 now, and she had exchanged her natural lifespan for a temporary fix. She didn't have years left. She had days. The collapse didn't happen at school. It happened at the gala my parents threw for Chloe's 17th birthday. Aunt Betty had forbidden me from going, but I had to see. I had a feeling this was the end. I wore my waitress uniform. I had taken a part-time job with a catering company specifically to get in. The ballroom was lavish. Ice sculptures, fountains of chocolate, a sea of Riverside's elite. My parents stood on the stage, dripping in diamonds. Dad looked younger, energized by success. Mom looked plastic, her smile fixed by Botox. And now, Dad announced into the microphone, my angel, my lucky star, Chloe. Chloe descended the grand staircase. She wore a dress made of crushed diamonds. She looked breathtaking, ethereal. She took the microphone. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you all. I just want to say.
She paused.
The microphone dipped. I was standing by the kitchen doors, holding a tray of champagne. I watched as a single gray hair sprouted from her scalp, visible under the harsh stage lights. Then another. Chloe? Mom stepped forward. Chloe scratched her arm. A chunk of skin peeled away like wet paper. The crowd gasped. Chloe's voice cracked. It dropped an octave, sounding like an old woman's croak. I want. She clutched her chest. She fell to her knees. As she hit the ground, the glamour broke. In seconds, she withered. Her hair turned white and fell out in clumps. Her skin wrinkled, spotted with age, and sagged off her bones. Her teeth loosened. She wasn't a 17-year-old girl anymore. She was a 90-year-old woman dying of organ failure. Help her, Dad screamed, dropping the mic. The guests were screaming, rushing for the exits. My parents huddled over the withered creature on the floor.
Daddy.
Chloe wheezed, reaching out a skeletal hand. Daddy, it hurts. Dad recoiled. He actually pulled away from her touch. What is this? What is this thing? It's me, Chloe cried, the sound weak. Daddy, buy it. Buy the cure. Use the money. Mom was hyperventilating. This isn't my daughter. My daughter is beautiful. This is a monster. I dropped the tray. Champagne shattered everywhere. I ran onto the stage, pushing past my stunned parents. I scooped Chloe's frail head into my lap. She weighed nothing. Mia, she rasped, her eyes milky with cataracts. Mia, the voice, it's asking. Don't, I sobbed. Chloe, you have nothing left to trade. System alert, the voice boomed, audible to everyone in the silent, terrified hall. Host lifespan depleted. Emergency protocol initiated. To extend life, host must offer the lifespan of a blood relative. Does the host confirm transfer of lifespan from Mia? The room froze. My parents stared at the air, hearing the voice for the first time. Transfer, my dad whispered, his eyes wide with greed. It can transfer life? Chloe looked up at me. I looked down at her. This was it. She hated me. She had hated me since we were 5. I was the healthy one. I was the one who survived. Do it, Mom shrieked. Chloe, take it. Take her life. Look at her. She's useless anyway. You're the star. My heart stopped. My own mother. I didn't move. I didn't run. I just looked at my sister. It's your choice, Chloe. Chloe looked at her parents. She saw Mom's twisted, desperate face, urging her to kill her sister. She saw Dad calculating the return on investment. Then she looked at me. The girl who held her when she was hungry. The girl who scraped fish scales while she wore silk. A tear leaked from her cloudy eye. System. Chloe croaked. Yes. Mom urged. Say yes. I refuse. The silence was deafening. Confirmation received. Transaction denied. Terminating host connection. Why? Mom screamed, lunging at her. You stupid girl. You could have lived. Chloe smiled. It was a gummy, toothless smile, but it was the first real smile I had seen on her in years. Because, she whispered, her voice fading to a breath. He never loved me. He loved the money. She looked at me. Run.
Mia.
Her hand went limp in my grasp. The light faded from her eyes. The body in my arms was just a shell of an old woman who had never truly grown up. Chloe's funeral was a circus. The press was there, speculating on the rapid aging disease. My parents played the grieving victims perfectly, dressed in black designer clothes, sobbing for the cameras. But behind closed doors, the house was a war zone. Without Chloe, the prediction stopped. Dad's third company had invested heavily in a tech startup based on a guess he made, thinking Chloe's luck would hold. It crashed 3 days after the funeral. The stocks he held plummeted. The fox spirit fortune teller came back, claiming the house was cursed because the vessel, Chloe, had broken. He demanded more money to cleanse it. Dad threw a vase at him. I was packing my bag. I was done. I was going back to Aunt Betty. Where do you think you're going? Dad stood in the doorway of my room, holding a bottle of whiskey. He looked haggard. The white hair from 10 years ago was now falling out, and his gut hung over his belt. Home, I said, zipping my backpack. To Aunt Betty. You ungrateful brat, he stepped forward. We fed you. We housed you.
And you let your sister die.
You could have saved her. The voice said so. She saved me, I said coldly. She finally saw you for what you are. I am your father. He raised his hand to strike me. I didn't flinch. Go ahead. Hit me. But know this. The luck didn't die with Chloe. The luck was never yours.
It was stolen time.
And now the bill is due. He froze, his hand trembling in the air. Fear flashed in his eyes. He was a superstitious man, after all. Get out, he whispered. Get out and never come back. I walked past him, down the marble stairs and out the front door. I didn't look back at the mansion. I walked 3 miles to the bus stop.
Years went by.
I graduated from Clearwater High as valedictorian. I got a full scholarship to Stanford, but I chose a local university to stay close to Aunt Betty. Aunt Betty's food stall expanded. We rented a small storefront.
Betty e mia esse grill.
It wasn't fancy, but the line wrapped around the block. We didn't have a system. We had a secret recipe and hard work. I studied business. I helped Betty manage the finances. We weren't rich, but we bought a nice condo with a balcony where Betty could grow tomatoes. One evening, while I was closing up the shop, a beggar knocked on the glass door. He was filthy, wearing a torn suit jacket that had once been expensive. His shoes were held together with duct tape. He looked at the roasting sausages with a hunger that made him shake. I opened the door. We're closed, sir, but I have some leftovers. He looked up. The street lamp illuminated his face. It was Dad. He looked ancient. His eyes were yellowed with jaundice. He didn't recognize me. He just saw a young woman with food. Please, he rasped. Just a bite. I haven't eaten in 2 days. My wife, she's sick. We lost the house. The bank took everything. The lawsuits. I stared at him. The man who had sold our fridge to gamble. The man who had dressed Chloe like a doll while she rotted from the inside. I felt a strange calmness.
No anger.
Just pity. I went to the warmer and wrapped 3 sausages and a loaf of bread. I handed them to him, along with a $20 bill. Here, I said. He grabbed the food, shoving a sausage into his mouth immediately, grease running down his chin. He wept as he ate. Thank you. You're an angel. An angel. He turned to shuffle away into the darkness. Dad. I called out.
He stopped.
He turned slowly, squinting at me.
Mia. Yeah.
He stared for a long time. Emotions warred on his face, shame, hope, greed. He took a step toward me. Mia, my daughter. You own this place? You have money. I do, I said.
Mia, listen.
Your mother. We can start over. We just need a small loan. Just a stake. I have a tip on a horse. I stepped back and locked the glass door. I flipped the sign to closed.
Mia.
Open the door. I'm your father.
Mia.
He pounded on the glass, his face distorted, leaving greasy smears on the pane. I pulled the blinds down, shutting him out. I walked to the back office where Aunt Betty was counting the register. She looked up, her face lined but her eyes bright and happy. Who was that, honey? Just a ghost, I said, taking off my apron. Ready to go home? Ready, she smiled. We walked out the back exit, arm in arm, into the cool night air. I looked up at the sky. There were no robotic voices.
No countdowns.
No systems. Just the stars, burning slowly, millions of miles away, shining on their own time. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and freedom. I'm craving fish soup, I said. Aunt Betty laughed. Then let's go make some. But be careful with the knife this time. I will, I promised. I have plenty of time.